The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. Are comics dying? I get mails like this fairly regularly saying, don't you think comics are dying? Comics are clearly dying. And my answer has been relatively consistent over the years. And by the way, it's not terribly different now. My answer being, no, I don't think comics are dying. And beyond that, I mean, not to be pedantic about it, but it gets into what do you mean by dying? Because comics as an art form, as a vehicle to tell stories, it's going to be around as long as people want to actually pick up a pen and tell a story. They're not going to die. Now, what might die is some of the mainstream comic companies, some of the publishers may die, but that's different from saying comics are dying. A better way to put it is some of the big comic publishers may cease to operate. I think one of the reasons why I push back hard against this, and for a lot of you, and some of you do in the comments, you bring this perspective, the comics is dying perspective. Here's a major reason why I resent that. Your beef is usually with Marvel or with DC. You know, you're still willing to support crowdfunding. You're still willing to support various other comics, depending on what you're into. By the way, could go the other way too. Maybe you love what Marvel's doing, but you hate what crowdfunding is doing. Either way, when you throw out comics is dying, what you're basically saying is Marvel equals comics. And I'm not willing to do that. Marvel and DC are huge publishers, no doubt about it. And they are absolutely dominant in this space, and they have the characters everybody knows, and on and on. So they're major pieces of, this industry. But they are not comics. And you'll have to forgive me if this sounds like just splitting hairs, but it's an important hair to split. Because, the idea of the art of storytelling, the idea of telling a story, the idea of coming up with something bigger than a movie, bigger than something simple, it is that will survive beyond Marvel. And it should. I think if we're just supposed to assume that the dominant big two are, for all intents and purposes, all that comics are, well, all that does is empower those big two. Why would I give Marvel that power? Why would we give DC that power? Why should I assume that those big publishers drive the entire industry? Yes, again, financially by units, they do today. But that is their space in the business world. That doesn't make them all of what comics are. So I've always pushed back hard. Comics aren't dying. However, there are definite cyclical cycles. But cyclical cycles, that's a weird way to put it. There's definitely aspects to comics that are deeply troubled. And in many cases, it's the it's a snake that eats its own tail. It's a thing that once you behave a certain way, it leads to a certain result. So one of the things that really got going heavily in comics is this idea of gatekeeping. And gatekeeping at one point was a method to how to keep, your contracts and your, basically your power, your standing, your money within comics. Nothing terribly wrong with that, by the way. I mean, it can certainly have negative effects, but generally speaking, when people have a job or they have a specialized skill, and writing and drawing comic books is a specialized skill, one of the things that goes on there is, when you have that job, you fight to keep that job. And one of the ways you keep that job is you make it tough for other people to enter it. And while that can certainly have negative impacts, it's not, this isn't, the most evil, sinful behavior, at least, or put a different way, it's very well understood behavior. And in comic books, there is a lot of that. There's a lot of people who are, it's a very shaky industry. There's not a lot of money in it. And so people hold on. They have a death grip on comics. They want to maintain their position any possible way they can. And so they will do lots of crazy things to do that. But here's where the transition happened that I think is pretty harmful to comics. At one point, people were holding on because they wanted to keep their job. They wanted to keep their money. They wanted to ensure that, they have job security. And then slowly but surely, that, gatekeeping for job security turned into gatekeeping for moral security or social security, meaning it was no longer about, hey, I'm going to keep people out because that will make sure I have a better chance of getting a job. It's, hey, I'm going to keep people out who vote a different way than me or who think a different way than me. And this, I think, is harmful on two different fronts. It's harmful from the standpoint of, look, I mean, as much as we talk about anything, businesses are meant to be businesses. They're not meant to be governed by, social aspects of kind of their personalities. It goes against the nature in which they're born. It doesn't mean a company, by the way, can't be socially responsible. That's fine. But if that's its primary operating mode of business, it falls apart. Because at the end of the day, companies need to be a little bit, binary in terms of make money, save money. That's how they're designed to function. By the way, it's a big myth that like, well, that's just how companies are in a capitalist society. No, they're that way in a socialist society too, believe it or not. Those are individual selling aspects. But look, if you have a business and you're meant to kind of sell something in your business, the intake and outtake of cash is a primary driver to what you're doing. Now, what you do with that cash, how well you drive your business, whole different thing. But that is what it's meant to be. And if suddenly you start to inflict a bunch of other things into it, like, hey, I do like cash, but, I like feeling good about the cash I spend more, that's where it gets very turned around very fast. And so in comics, we had the problem where people were gatekeeping in order to give themselves job security, keep their money. And then slowly they start gatekeeping based on, do you fit into my social group? Do you fit into my clique? Do you fit into my ideology? And that's a very, very different mode of being. And so what happened is, first off, for a business to survive, you got to have somebody who cares about the money. And certainly people did. And so very rapidly, I think a lot of the leaders in these companies figured out that, hey, I can hire people on the cheap and I can basically ignore big parts of what's going on. If I just, succumb to if I hire the right politics, I can basically hire people for nothing. And certainly some of the companies veered into that. One thing that I don't, this is a dirty little secret about comics. I'm probably, I'm revealing something probably I shouldn't. A lot of the little indie companies that hire a lot of some of the most obnoxious, annoying writers that you see on Twitter, the owners of those companies, the people who are putting in the money, heavily conservative people. Heavily. What they realize is that they can hire people, for pennies if they just kind of let it become a goofy playhouse. And once you've done that, if you also start to make the assumption or the belief that it doesn't really care what you output, you're in the comic business and, maybe you're playing a game of I'll put out 50 comics and one of them will get a Netflix deal and I'll ride with that. Then, you basically put up a lot more garbage. And so it is weird. You've got a bunch of, I should name names. You got a bunch of owners of these small indie companies with absolute 100% Trump voters who are those owners, but they hire the most left-wing crazy people you can imagine. And so really everybody's just screwing with everybody in this scenario. It makes you very cynical. Anyway, I'll move away from that. The other problem, though, if you're gatekeeping based on kind of social aspects, it goes against one ugly part of human nature that people don't usually like to, admit or at least face head on, which is, look, if you have a level of gatekeeping based on, keeping the talented people out from, beating you, and taking your job, then you don't have that natural pressure to improve in your job. And you do, however, you'll run into a situation rather quickly where, there's no natural drive or instinct to actually push things forward or do things better. And in comics, if you take out that natural competitiveness, you're left with, I don't know, you're left with what we got now, which is just a very casual way of doing business. It's actually thoroughly bizarre if you look at a lot of the people in comics who normally probably should try and fight for a position and don't, because they're just being overly like, whatever, it's just comics. That's not healthy either. If you're going to have a job and you're going to try and push for quality, you're going to need to want to push to actually achieve and win and beat other people for a position. That is, while it can have some unhealthy outcomes, by its nature, it is healthy. So I say all this because, are comics dying? Well, no, comics aren't dying because, again, comics are an idea. They could be, whatever we want them to be. But are comics unhealthy? Yeah, comics are fairly unhealthy. And one of the biggest ways they are unhealthy is a lot of this natural competition, a lot of this fighting to have a job, a lot of this pushing to do more is it's secondary to people. When it's secondary to people, all kinds of things break. I don't know if this makes any sense. I guess this is a long-winded way of saying, greed is good. No, I'm kidding. That's an old 80s concept. Look, it is healthy and normal in a lot of respects to have a level of pushing and urgency and competitiveness and all the things that drive people to do the best they can in their job. And when you take that away, comics suffer. And saying they die, it's very dramatic. But it's definitely not a good thing. And it definitely doesn't encourage the kind of growth and natural kind of spirit and ability that you should see places. But what do I know? I'm just some guy. Oh, sorry, that's somebody else's video. Anyway, like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.